This one's for the culture. Me and wifey in the room thinking of a master plan, thinking how we can influence the culture from where we stand. Knowing that our steps are ordered by the master's hand, still 10 toes down, we ain't switching up the stance. The mission of this music ain't just to make them dance, trying to tell them about the
At the top level of competitiveness, though, women are comparable. I wouldn't necessarily say better. I wouldn't say less than. They're just comparable. You look at instances like Serena Williams.
The greatest athlete of all time.
Okay. Fine. The greatest woman. She is the greatest athlete in her sport. A lot of men can't play her. Like, period. We were watching the women's NAAC in doubles.
What's that?
NCAA tournament earlier. And you were dogging them because of how bad they were. But if you played a pickup game with any of those girls, they would smash you.
100%.
So it just depends on the situation. So again, it's not that we want to be better than. We want to be.
Y'all do.
Nobody wants to be. I mean, okay.
Y'all do. There's literally a commercial that I see all the time right now talking about anything you can do, I can do better. And it's a Nike commercial, and then at the end, it's a bunch of women saying that they're better than men. And it ends with Michael Jordan saying, "No, you're not." And then the girl says, "Yes, I am," and hits the golf shot. Like, that's a thing. And that's played every day on ESPN or whatever channel.
Well, maybe you should watch a different channel then. The thing about it is when you've been so used and so conditioned to be told or understand that the reality is that men make more money than you. We're sitting here.
That's not fair.
No, I'm not done.
All men.
I'm not done.
Okay, good.
We have the same degree. I could have the same experience. I have just as much skin in the game as you do, but you get promoted for a position over me because of what's between your legs. That's BS. Fine, if you want to take it back to women's sports. No, they don't bring in as much revenue. But when you have female athletes that are more decorated than basic athletes that are riding the bench, and female athletes make a tenth of what they make, that is ridiculous. The women's U.S. soccer team by far surpasses the men's soccer team in popularity, in skill, in everything. But it wasn't until recently, within the last year or two, that they really started to get the recognition that they deserved.
I mean, they had the recognition, they didn't have the money. And they had to go to court to get it. I still think if you put the U.S. women's team versus the men's team, the men would beat them. But I get your point.
And Barely.
Okay, we'll disagree. And so I get that point. And so you use some very unique situations, use the greatest female team, and argue one of the greatest women's sports teams, but I'll take that. I'm with you there. But I am going to push back on the notion, and this is something, and I'm going to transition to a slightly different topic, but it's great, and it's good and it's bad. Like, I want, and I know I'm going to call it like some misogynist or whatever, and y'all can label me whatever you want. I'm with women making more. I'm not with inequality. But I think it's a flawed argument to say that man versus woman, this is what happens. Because it happens with man versus man. When I put it and fill out an application, or when I go in for an interview, I have a less chance of getting it than certain groups of men also.
Yeah.
And that's never factored in. When y'all make these men versus women conversations, that don't happen. I would argue, and I don't have the stats, and I would love somebody to put them up for me, what the stats are from what I make per hour or for every dollar, however the breakdown is, versus a white woman or an Asian woman to black men.
But see, and then even
that
within
number,
that argument,
I would like to know more, because that to me is a more realistic argument. Now, as a black woman,
you're at the bottom of the totem pole.
And I agree
all
with
the
that.
time.
And I agree with that. But when you're talking about these equality conversations, you're not talking about that. Or not you. The people that have these conversations, they're not talking about all or just black women. They're talking about all women. And some women correlate to certain men better than if you're comparing it to a white man. A white man is going to beat everybody every time.
Yes.
That's the way the world currently functions. And it sucks, and I ain't with it, and I'm hoping that it will change, and I'm doing what I can to help it get to that point.
Most definitely.
But that part, as a black man, it frustrates me. Just like, and me and you had this conversation with Women's History Month. And then my response to you was, well, what about Men's History Month? And your response was, well, men have every single day of the year. And I said, white men have every single day of the year. Black men don't. We don't get much of anything. There's no Black Man History Month. We might get Black History Month, and we split that with women. And then Women's History Month, black women get celebrated again, rightfully so. But black men don't get lump us in with other men because we don't fit into that category and we don't get those benefits. And so in this situation, and we've seen it in entertainment and society as a whole, except recently with Tiger Woods, he pulled some stuff.
I don't know, like he finessed that for real.
I don't know how he did it, but when we look at,
he gave away the green jacket. That's
when we get, I can't think of Epstein and how he handled his business. We look at how Harvey handled his business versus people like Bill Cosby. We look at what's currently going on with Deshaun Watson. I'm not speaking negatively against any of those women, but I think it would be very different that if some lawyer could that's the wrong word, not manufacture. If 19 women had filed a lawsuit against a single white man and the lawyer was like, I'm not giving you any information on who any of these people are, I don't think that would fly. Like the way in which this
He's
is
handling
being,
the case,
the lawyer is handling the case, the way they're treating a black man, a white man would not stand for that. I don't know what laws and what things we need to be put in place, but it wouldn't be going down like this.
So to your point, one, we were speaking generally, but if you want to break it down by race, no. Black men, you can't compare what Black men make, what happens to Black men in the criminal justice system on a broad scale like that. I 100% agree. But at the end of the day, for as hard as Black men have it, Black women have it just as hard, if not harder at times. Historically, Black women are always left out of the conversation. Even like that movie Hidden Figures. They made all this hoopla at the end about Katherine Johnson's character being in the room because she was there and she created the math that made this whole thing possible, when in reality, she sat in like a little room and watched it on TV. Completely fictitious. There are instances over and over and over and over again in history, even up till now, where Black men are beginning to get more recognition. But Black women, a lot of times, are left out of the conversation. They're not at the table, and it's a complete misrepresentation of what we do for not just our families, but for our communities, period. I don't have the numbers, but there are numbers that back that up. And this is not our relationship. This is not our thing. Mm-hmm. But even when you talk about the way we are treated, physically and mentally, we all go out into the world and deal with what it's like to be a Black person in America. Obviously, times have gotten a little bit better, but there was a time where, as a Black woman, you went out into the world and you were abused, and then you came home and you were abused. And the only people that really you got to love on were your kids, because you were getting beat from your man, and then you were getting beat by society. And that is fact. It's just fact. And so, again, I 100% agree with Black men not getting the recognition and the things that they deserve on all platforms of life. But you also have to remember that Black women have not only been there with you not getting, but have also been in the back seat trying to get the scraps that you guys are throwing out historically. And if you want to argue me on that, be my guest. Please comment that I am right. And I don't need validation, because I've read enough, I've seen enough, I've heard enough to know that this is true. So, yeah.